Kip, what's going on, man? How are you, brother?
Good, sir. Good.
We're right on the back and the heels of a very controversial podcast yesterday. Did you have the chance to listen yet?
I did not.
Did you see what it was yet? Oh, I'm disappointed, Kip. Come on now, man.
Well, I had a crazy morning. I haven't downloaded it yet.
No, it's good. It was with Bishop Robert Barron it was titled A Primer on Biblical Masculinity. So I got a lot of great feedback, and I got some, I wouldn't say hostility, but some negative feedback as well. So
because it's biblical, or
yeah, it's funny how many people lose their minds because you mention the Bible.
I know.
It's crazy. It's like it's just an interesting thing, you know. It's like if you don't believe in the Bible, that's fine, no problem, or aren't religious or atheist or whatever. Like, cool. I mean, do what works for you. But it's just funny how many men freak out if you have that. Don't push your religion on me. It's a perspective. Nobody's pushing anything. You can choose to embrace it or not, or extract elements that will work for you. But it's always funny, these people who feel like they're either persecuted or somebody's pushing religion because they're talking about it. It's just a very fascinating thought process to me.
Yeah, I love other religions.
Like what?
It draws me.
Like what's interesting to you about it?
So I went to India to attend a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And that wedding was amazing. It was so cool. There's all these rituals and ceremonies and like, who knows what's even going on? Like I'm oblivious. And I had someone sitting with me explaining certain aspects of the wedding. And I just find it fascinating.
It is interesting.
Not anything. I'm just like, oh, that's really interesting. I love that. Like it's something we should brace. One example of this is if you or I found old text, which is the Bible for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And we found the book of John on like parchment or whatever. Would you read it?
I'd be interested in it. Yeah.
Of course you would.
Right.
Like you'd be like, this is amazing. It's like some old written text by some individual, so long ago. Like, of course you would read it.
Well, here's another perspective. If you took the book, let's just say John again, you took the book of John and it was written by, let's just assume, a modern day author with no religious context about Jesus Christ or God or anything like that, and you just wrote it as a modern fictional work, how many people would be like supremely interested in that story and be like, oh, there's so many lessons here to be learned. But then you say, well, it's religious. I can't listen to this. It's just very interesting how many people. It's indicative of a closed mind versus an open mind, right?
Yeah.
Like you can be open-minded without embracing or accepting the thought, and I have room to improve there, just like you and everybody else who's listening. But it's just a fascinating little social experiment when we have podcasts like that.
I mean, I'm sure all the time you read things or listen to podcasts where you go, yeah, I totally don't agree. But you're not threatened or angry or upset about it.
Right.
You're like, considering it and saying, hey, I don't 100% agree, but it's interesting concept or whatever. And especially when we talk about religions, because why? There's so many based principles that are shared across all religion that it's like, you can't even make them wrong. They're principles, like
they're not even
foundational principles of life.
That's right. And they don't even need to be religious. Like so many people follow these principles without realizing that lesson was shared first in the Bible, but they've adopted it because it's so ingrained into who we are, especially in the I was going to say especially in the States, but I don't even think that's true. Just across the globe, it's so indoctrinated into who we are and how we perform and morality and everything else. It's just part of us, whether you realize it or not. It's part of you. It's interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, cool. So
we can't wait to download and listen to it.
Yeah, have a listen. Let me know what you think. And so we started this one controversial just by talking about it. So it is what it is. Yeah. But hopefully we can answer some different questions for you guys and get you pointed on the right path. That's what we're trying to do here.
Totally. A lot of our questions today were fielding from our Facebook group. To join us there, go to facebook.com/group/Order of Man. It's not just to submit questions to this episode of the podcast, but it's also to collaborate, discuss, and to have meaningful conversations with like-minded men online. So join us there. And Ryan also does a lot of posts of valuable information, and we kind of use that platform to kind of keep you guys updated. of different things that we're doing, different events and those kind of things. So
yes, sir.
Take the time and join us over on Facebook.
Yeah.
Should we do it?
Let's do it, man. I'm ready.
All right. First question, Matt Horner. What is Mr. Mickler's favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast?
Man.
Like this one, obviously. This is all I listen to. I actually listen, I'll just pull up my podcast app here. I actually listen to quite a few podcasts.
So this is what all of you guys should be doing right now as you're listening, because I always do this. Whenever someone says, I listen to podcasts, I pull up my podcast app and I do a little bit like, okay, do a little ad. So what you say.
I listen to London Real, the Great Man podcast by Stephen Mansfield, who is going to be coming on our podcast again soon.
Nice.
The Jordan Harbinger Show, Joe Rogan, Real AF with Andy Frisella, Hands in Daylight, Mic Drop. What else?
Who's Mic Drop?
Mic Drop. Mike Ritland.
Okay.
He is a former Navy SEAL and trains dogs, which is what we took our dogs through. So really good stuff. Sometimes, occasionally, I listen to Tom Bilyeu, who I think you're a fan of, right? Tom Bilyeu?
Yeah, I listen to Tom.
Yeah. That's Star Talk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, occasionally, Ben Shapiro, Art of Manliness, Cleared Hot with Andy Stumpf. Mind Pump is another one I listen to.
Those are a little long sometimes.
Mind Pump, yeah. Some of those do get long. Jocko occasionally. I don't listen to that one all the time, but Jocko occasionally. So yeah, that's primary in my list of podcasts.
Cool.
I like I try to listen to different stuff too. Stuff that I'm not typically going to listen to, just to give me new perspectives and new ideas, and give me thoughts on things I hadn't considered before or don't really think about all that often. And it gives me a break from thinking about all this like self-help stuff, which is actually important too. Because if I get down that path of self-help, it's good, but it can be taken to an unhealthy level where everything's got to be productive and you've got to be hustling and grinding and all these little buzzwords that we like to use, and it just gets exhausting sometimes, and you just need like a mental break from all of that stuff at times. So I do try to that's why I like Star Talk and things like that.
That's funny. I added Business Wars. I find that highly entertaining.
I haven't listened to it. I have to check it out.
It's really interesting.
Is it?
Yeah, they cover like a history of like, I don't know, Burger King versus McDonald's. And
that's cool.
Like how those two went to war with each other, or Boeing
that's cool.
versus Airbus, and it's really interesting. So
sweet. Yeah. Is Airbus different than Boeing?
Yeah. Oh, you just insulted like tons of people.
No, is it its own? I thought Airbus was like a model. It's a company.
It's a manufacturer. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Airbus was formed by a number of different countries in Europe.
I thought it was a model is what I thought it was.
No, to compete against American airline manufacturers.
Well, I just shared some of my ignorance there. So
hey, well, and because of Business Wars, I sounded smart.
Yes,
because I didn't know that until I listened to that episode.
It's like I didn't even know that either. No, all right, what else we got? Good first question. There's the first one. Cranked out of the way.
Rick Diamond. What do you do when you feel a decision is right for your family, but your wife is not on board and is mad because she feels like you are not listening to her?
Well, I think this conversation actually starts before this decision is being made, because there's going to be some choices that you think are going to be the right path that she's not necessarily going to agree with. Some more pressing than others, right? Some more relevant than others. But if you can build up that level of trust before you get to that decision by leading the family in the right path and doing what you say you're going to do and constantly improving and excelling and advancing in your career and getting your health in check, you position yourself as someone who is credible and has the authority to for somebody else to voluntarily follow. So if I trust you, for example, Kip, I may not entirely agree with everything that you say or want to do, but I'm more inclined to follow you, even if I don't totally agree or if I'm not on board, because you've built up a level of trust and credibility that I can, as somebody who is potentially going to follow you, rely on that, you know what, Kip hasn't led me astray before. He's had a lot of success here. So even though I don't agree, maybe he has a perspective or something I don't consider. So we build up levels of trust through previous actions, and that way, when there's disagreements, that's used as a variable, a factor that another party, in this case your wife, would consider when deciding whether or not to go along or not. Now that said, it sounds like that time is come and gone. Right now you're at decision time. A couple of things. You have to decide first and foremost, is this a battle worth fighting for? Like, I don't know the context of the decisions you guys are talking about, but is this something that is very important to you? Because if it's not important, then
let her run.
No big deal, right? If it's not relevant, or you're 50-50 on it and she has a different idea and she's more convicted about that idea and it doesn't matter to you, then it's okay to like let her have this one, if you will, right? So that's something to consider. Now, if it is something where you're strongly convicted about, this is a PR campaign at this point. Like you've got to go on a PR campaign. You've got to market it. You've got to tell her why it's a good thing. You've got to eliminate a lot of the uncertainty and risk. Because I'm telling you right now, that's probably what she's considering. Because if you look at men, some of the differences between men and women, men are more inclined to take calculated risks than women are, right? That's just the way that we're hardwired. Men go out, they battle, they protect, they defend. We've talked at length about this. So we're more inclined to take risks, especially when it comes to career, financial risk, even potentially moving. So now you need to really sell this thing by explaining her the features and the benefits. You need to eliminate concerns. You need to shore up uncertainties, and you need to shed light on everything that she might be fearful about. So I would highly encourage you to listen to her. And even if she's not telling you exactly what her concerns and frustrations are, look for little cues and hints that explain what it is she's experiencing. Like, why is she not on board? And I'd be willing to put money on the fact that she's not willing to be on board because there's an element of uncertainty or fear or concern about the unknown. It's the element of risk that's causing this rift. I'd be willing to bet on that. So you've got to minimize the risk and explain why this would be a good thing and how you're going to mitigate any potential loss or risk that could potentially arise because of this decision you're making. That's as good as advice I can give in a general manner, because I don't know the context of what you're dealing with.
I think that's solid, right? I'm walking away from your response thinking, okay, one, establishing that deposit with my spouse.
Yeah.
So when this time comes, it's not as debatable, right? That I'm a trustworthy, and I'm really seeing this as me looking at this and saying, hey, my wife does this a lot. Okay, well, I'm probably out of integrity a lot, where I'm saying I'll do something, I'm not. I don't have a proven track record. Like, there's a lot that needs to be happening on a day-to-day basis. So when these scenarios come up, I'm in a trustworthy relationship where she knows that I wouldn't put us in harm's way, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Making a sound decision on our part. So I think that is really profound. And I think the other thing is profound too is, and it's funny that this question came up because just the other week, something came up and I can't remember what it was. I don't know. She sent me a text message and she said she was out of town. She's like, hey, just so you know, I told Ian. She started off like, I know this might make you upset or whatever, like a really like
buffering it a little bit, right?
Yeah, this huge buffer. And it was about Ian, my son, going out and starting the cars before we go out and drive off. And I'm old school, right? Like, as a kid, it's like my parents are always like, go outside, start the car, warm them up or whatever.
Yeah.
And someone told my spouse of like, hey, modern cars, like, you don't really need to warm them up. And it's actually probably more negative than positive to actually have them running and whatever, right? And I'm not a gearhead, so I don't know if that's true or accurate or whatever. But the point is she thought I was going to get upset about this idea of, and I really was like, I don't care.
I don't care.
But my point is like, but apparently I care about way too many things that aren't that important for her to be immediately assumed that we're going to get in a debate over.
For her to have that concern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, okay, I'm not letting her not win, but you know what I mean? I'm probably debating way too often that she's thinking we're going to debate over something lame like this, right? Where I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
So I'm like, okay.
It's just something to evaluate. And I don't think you're suggesting this, and I'm certainly not, is like, you're not going to roll over. We're not suggesting you roll over, especially on issues
choose your
that matter.
battles.
But does it matter? Yes. Cool. Then PR campaign. Does it not matter? Cool. Let it go. Let her have this one. It's okay.
Yeah. Totally. All right. Eric Page, as many will notice the lack of actual education most students get in school nowadays, I'm wondering what type of extra education do you give your kids? beyond setting the example of teaching your sons to be men, do you give them extra math problems, spelling words, assign them books to read, and anything else of that nature?
Yeah, I like this question because, if you look at the educational system, it's really designed to teach children what to think, not how to think, right? You got to memorize your times tables. Here's proper grammar and punctuation. Here's how you write an essay. Here's how you...
A lot of memorization items.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying you shouldn't have that stuff. I mean, we all need some foundational knowledge. Like, we need to know our times tables. My second son is going through that right now, and he's like, I don't want to memorize. This is stupid. I'm like, you'll actually use this stuff, it is important, and some of it, yes, is just memorization. So I'm not downplaying the importance of having this information, but where the traditional educational system falls short is practical application and how to think about these things. So the way that I've fostered this in my children, and I'm attempting to, is getting them involved in as many real-world scenarios and letting them lead in as many of those scenarios as possible, and then just asking good questions so they start thinking about the problems and the issues and everything that they might be dealing with. So my oldest son, many of you know, is our store manager. So every order that is purchased in the store, he ships, he packages, he orders the supplies. When we're low, he goes in and he inventories and he says, Dad, we've got to make, this order, and we've got to order these boxes or this much tape. And then he goes in and he's able to see, how much money he's made based on how many packages he's sent. So I'm constantly talking with him about, okay, how do we capitalize on this? One day he came to me, this was probably 8 months or so ago, and he had been on Amazon and he was looking for boxes. And he said, Dad, we normally get these boxes, and I think they were, I don't know, maybe they were like $1.50 or $1 a box, something, right? And he said, but these boxes, they're just as good, and they're 80 cents a box. And I'm just using those numbers. I can't remember exactly what it was. He's like, that means that every time we sell a hat and we package it in one of these, we make 30 cents more with like no extra effort. Now he's thinking about it, right? Like, I was so proud that he was thinking about it from that context. So not only did he know his times tables and how to add and subtract, now he learned how to apply it practically so that we could create a better scenario for ourselves and for our customers in this case as well. So these are things that you can do. Like, anytime there's real world scenarios or there's problems. The other day, I'll give you another example. The other day, we had to measure some space in our house because we're going to do some hardwood flooring in the front area of our space, which is carpeted now. And my wife said, hey, will you let me know how much we need to order? I said, yeah, come on out with me to my second son. And I said, how are we going to figure out how much wood to order? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, well, we need to find out the square footage is what we need to look for. And he's like, okay. And I said, have you ever heard of that? Do you know what that is? He's like, no, I have no idea. And I said, well, you're going to use some of your times tables here that we've been working on, but here's what square footage is. And so I said, grab the tape measure, pull it down here. And we measured the length and the width and then multiplied them, and we figured it out, right? But we took his foundational knowledge of times tables and what he's learning and then applied it practically. So that is how we expand the educational and learning process. Is we say, okay, here's what you know now as a father and a leader of your children. How do you apply it? In what situation would this actually make sense? If you're looking at grammar, for example, my oldest son, he knows punctuation, he knows the proper way to put together a sentence, he knows adjectives and verbs and pronouns and et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things he did when we very first started with the shipping is I said, hey, why don't you write just a note, a letter, and we'll print it on note cards, and then that way everybody who orders something, you'll sign it. And so he wrote this little paragraph, and I went in there and I said, okay, well, here's some punctuation errors, here's some grammatical errors, and here's why this is important. People need to know that we're professional, that we take this seriously. They need to be able to understand what we're talking about. So you take the knowledge and then you couple it with practical application, and I think you're really going to set your kids up for success. But let them experience it. Let them try, let them struggle through it a little bit, and let them apply the information they're learning.
Yeah, I love that. And it gives them some grit too. Sometimes when we hand things over to them and say, well, figure it out.
Right.
I'll be here to kind of guide, and, and it teaches them some perseverance and the ability to confidence in themselves so that they can resolve or figure out an issue on their own.
Yeah. One of the other things, Skip. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say this past quarter, one thing that I had on my battle plan was, and it was really because one of my older kids doesn't like reading. You say, hey, let's read. And he'll be like, you know, like he's just all against it. And I thought, man, I don't want to make this mistake and we joke, Asia and I, about we have batch 1 and batch 2 because we have a big gap between our kids.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so we're really focused on batch 2 right now as batch 1 is leaving the house.
Right.
And my thought process this past quarter is like reading. So we've started every night for 10 minutes before we say family prayers and go to bed. We actually all sit down in the living room. They grab a book. I set the timer and we read. And I'm trying to do that really young, you know, 6 and 8 years old. So then that way they get into this habit of like, that's where growth comes from, is learning and reading. Because without the desire to want to read, man, they're going to miss out on all types of opportunities to learn and grow.
Right. Well, and even with reading, think about it. Does it matter what they're reading? No. So
grammar's getting picked up. All kinds of things are getting picked up. Yeah.
So if they don't want to read the textbook, like I can appreciate that. But maybe they want to read, with boys specifically, my boys, they loved Hatchet. This is a great book, right? Yeah. And so we read Hatchet together. I'd read a little bit, they'd read a little bit, and it was a cool story. And then we would talk about the story, and I'd be like, hey, what would you do in that scenario? Or what should he have done when the moose charged him? You know, so you talk about that and you bring it to life. The other thing I was going to share too is with my second son, he's all about Legos. All about Legos.
It sounds like you're all about Legos.
We're both about Legos. Yes, I like my Legos too. But we have, when we're trying to build something, we have names for our pieces. So like a brick, like a traditional Lego brick would be I need a 2x4. Like that's what it would be, right? Or if it's a traditional brick, but it's like a thin one, then we call it a 2x4 flat. If it's a smooth top, we call it a 2x4 smooth, or a 2x1, right? So he's learning math.
A 2x2 is the perfect
the square.
Is that what you're calling it?
Exactly.
Okay, I get it.
So he's learning math and he's learning multiplication. So he'll give me a 2x4, and I said, hey, I need a red 2x4. So he'll get it to me, and then and I'm like, hey, how many is that? And he's like, 8. I'm like, exactly. And then we build it, right? So you just build in all these little things with it, and they learn it, they pick it up, but you're having fun in the process, and you're, as Jocko would say, you're flanking learning, right? Like it's covert learning, it's fun, and people think, well, learning can't be fun, especially kids. But if you make it fun and you disguise the learning, it's kind of like if you have to give your dog or a cat a pill. What do? You wrap it in a piece of bacon, and then the dog has no problem with it, right? It's the same thing with learning. You know, you wrap it in something that's fun, that they're engaged with, and they think they're just having fun with dad, but they're learning and they're growing and they're expanding.
Yeah, and the example you used on the book I think is spot on. Especially when I was reading The Warrior Kid with my daughters, I'd always like pause and, what would you do if you were Mark, right? And they're like, oh, I think he should do this, and then they're like, what does he do? End of chapter. Tomorrow, shut the book. And they're like, no. Yeah, and they're like all excited about reading the next day, right?
For sure. Yeah.
It's funny. Cool. All right, Russ Thorgerson, what is or are the best lessons I can give my 6-year-old son to learn and do Legos?
Always do Legos. Responsibility, taking care of your stuff, treating it with respect. Consequences for actions. We've talked about that at length. Is, hey, if there's an action, there's a consequence. If you backtalk your mom, then there's a consequence. The other thing on that vein is when my kids, especially my oldest boy, because he's getting older and he gets a little mouthy as he's getting to his teenage years, is if he backtalks my wife, his mom, I don't say don't backtalk your mother. I say don't talk to my wife like that. Because I think there's more weight in that. Like, you don't talk to that's my wife you're disrespecting. And where he's becoming a young man, to me that carries a little bit more weight. So think about the way that you're communicating a message and ask yourself, is this landing the way it needs to be understood? And I'm not saying just in that context, but just think about what you're saying and how he's accepting that. Because now he's transitioning from like my little boy to a man, right? So that's why we talk about it in that context. 6 is pretty young, but I would say that, the words that we use, accountability, responsibility, and then taking care of your things and consequences, I think that's going to be the biggest. And then just fun, like just have fun together. Like you're not like perfectly teaching him something, but you're just being present and fun. At 6 years old, man, that's what really matters.
Yeah. I've come to the realization lately that I appreciate a lot of what my kids do, and they do a lot of great things, and I don't communicate it. But what I constantly communicate is what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I really need to take that kind of emotional bank account approach that we often talk about about our spouses, and carry that over with my kids, and realize that if I'm going to criticize something or correct them, I need to be having a positive balance to be able to do so. Otherwise, I'm just kind of ripping at them, and it's going to be more negative than positive. And so that's what's been present for me, at least over the last few months, is I probably over criticize with minimal communication about what they are doing good at, and those kind of things. So.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is a lot of people say, well, I'm doing it from a position of care. Well, I actually agree. You probably are. Like you personally are probably doing that because you care, because I know that's the case.
Yeah.
But is that the message that's being heard? That's the thing to consider.
And there's so much stuff that I'm actually proud of that I never communicate those.
Right, of course.
Right? Like, so I'm thinking like, oh, he's doing good. Hey, fix these things. He sees it as all he ever tells me is what I'm doing wrong.
Right.
They're unaware of all the things that we're proud of.
Yeah,
and so,
definitely.
Yeah. Billy Huckhill. Billy Huckhill. We're going with that. I have a son who lives with his mother in another state who refuses to talk or have any contact with me. He is 12 years old. His 10-year-old brother and 5-year-old sister still call and visit, but he isn't allowing me to call or text of any kind. Do you have any suggestions on how to bridge the gap?
Oh, man, I'm sorry. This is really difficult. I can't imagine being in this situation, so I feel for you, brother. I really do. I would consider the relationship with your ex-wife or the mother of his mother, and ask yourself how that relationship is. Because if that relationship is weak and strained, there's probably some talking and some things going on behind closed doors that you're not aware of that may be perpetuating some of this. She actually, if you do this right, could become your biggest advocate. Right? Like if you make amends for some past indiscretions or some things that maybe went on. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but I think you'll get the point. But if you work on this relationship with your ex, his mother, and you get her on your team, she is I think he said 12 years old. She is that boy's biggest influence right now. And if you can make her an advocate for you, then she's going to not plant seeds of discontent. She's going to plant seeds of optimism and hope and effort and risk, right? He's going to have to be a little bit courageous and take some level of risk to do this, because he's not familiar with you and going and spending time with you or talking with you. So I think that's the angle I would take. And also I would take the angle of the other children too, right? You have, I think you said 2 other kids, and I'm not saying manipulate them. I'm not saying get them in between or put them in a weird or awkward or uncomfortable situation. I'm just saying be the best possible dad, be engaged, be present when they are with you, and be the type of dad that you want to be. Really, really make a conscious effort to identify what that looks like and then act in accordance with that. And, maybe you suggest to them, hey, when you go home, let Jason know that I've been thinking about him. That's it. That's all. You just say things like that. You make your ex or his mother your advocate, and man, in a difficult situation, I would say that's your best approach. That's what I've got.
Yeah. I think that there's influence probably happening, and because it's not being returned from your son, you assume that it's wasted time or effort. And I see it in the verbiage that you wrote, is not allowing me to text. He's allowing you to text, and there's probably a high probability that he's probably even reading the text. He's just not replying. And I would suggest that there's still influence and benefit to that. So whether it's you being consistent, and I think this is the difficult part, is you being consistent. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a voicemail on a cell phone that, I don't know, every other day you text, every other, once a week you call, or whatever that looks like. If you consistently do it and let go of the idea of like, he didn't reply, it's not working, so I'm going to stop. Like stop that thought process immediately.
Yeah. No expectations for it.
Yeah. Remove the expectation and just let him know, and send him a text every other day or whatever that looks like for you, and say, thinking about you, son. Hope you have a great day at school. Your mom said you had a soccer game this Saturday. Best of luck. Be safe. Remember to have a fun time. Like give him advice, give him direction, send him the text. And when he doesn't reply, let go of all the meaning that he's not replying and do it anyway.
Right.
And what's going to happen is he's going to start realizing like, hey, Dad's not letting up. He's super consistent with his communication. Those things are going to be meaningful. They really will be meaningful. I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm horrible at replying to text sometimes. And sometimes I'll get a solid, meaningful text and it's meaningful. I'll be like, damn, that was really nice. And I forget to reply. Your son might be doing the same thing where he's seeing the value of the text and just not replying to you. And so I would really just use the technology, voicemails and text messages to let him know that you're thinking and caring about him.
You know, the other thing I really like about that is, let's just hypothetically assume, for the sake of this discussion point, that he's not reading the text.
Yeah.
I still think there's value in it.
Yeah. He still sees a ding, Dad,
or
whatever.
let's just assume he doesn't see anything. What I'm saying is, I think there's value, therapeutic value, in you doing that. Yeah, because you can express how you feel and what you're thinking, and also you get to say that you're doing everything that you can to improve this strained relationship. And there's value in that, because what happens if in 10 years he's graduated, he's grown up, he's out of the house, he's out on his own, he moves away, whatever, and you have to look back and honestly answer the question of, did I do everything I could, with no, I didn't. That would suck. But if you can ask that question, even if, and I'm just saying, even if this doesn't work out the way that you expect it to or would like it to, at least at a minimum, at the very minimum, you get to say, I really, really tried for the last 10 years. I did everything that I knew I could do and knew how to do to make this work. And that may not be much of a consolation, but it is something. Yeah. And you can take pride in knowing that you did your part. You know, it takes two to tango, and you did your part.
Yeah, I like that. Doug Lee, how do you deal with it when your 10-year-old daughter tells you that she doesn't believe in God? She was filled with anxiety about telling us, and it came out in a flood of tears because she was worried we would hate her for saying it. Some good questions.
It is really good. A lot of them centered around kids this time. Yeah. And being a father, which is good. It's a good theme. How do you deal with it? I would say you deal with it you just love her. That's it. Like you love her. You don't beat her over the head with, well, you have to because this and that. Like, why? You know, why? Help me understand. Like, I want to understand why you don't. And when it's appropriate, talk about your beliefs. Like if you share your testimony about God over and over and over and over and over, and you try to bludgeon her with it, like that's going to get annoying, and it's actually probably going to drive a wedge and push her away even further, especially as she gets older. 10 is young, even for a little girl, but as she gets 12, 13, 15, 16, and she gets hormonal and everything's changing around and she wants some independence, like you're going to drive a wedge by doing it that way. So you just live it. You know, you live your belief. You try to understand why you love her in a, I'm assuming you're Christian, so you love her in a Christian way, and you just be a great father. That's it. Like, I don't know that there's any great answer. Like, well, if you say this one magical phrase or you share this one verse, then she'll understand. It's probably not like real rational. Maybe there's some other influence going on here, but just strive to understand and continue to impart the values, almost like the prodigal son, right? Continue to impart the values, and hopefully she grows up on these principles and she embraces them. And then when and if she's ready to take another look at spirituality and a higher power, then she'll remember all the lessons that you and your wife taught and how you showed her love even in that difficult time, because it must be difficult. I actually think this about a child, coming out of the closet and telling their parents that they're gay. It's like, I hope that situation doesn't happen in our case. Like, I want my sons and daughter to be straight. Like, that's what I want for them, right? And I've thought about that. What if one of my children comes out would I treat them differently? Like, I hope not. I hope I would still treat them with love and respect and try to understand their perspective and, not embrace necessarily their decision, but strive to understand it and love them all the same. It's the best we can do.
Yeah. I would really drive that concept that belief is an action. It's a choice. And I think sometimes kids, when we talk about religion, it's like an on or off thing, and it's not a choice that they have to make. And so I would really kind of set this precedence of like, I choose to believe. Do I know? Do I have a strong understanding of these certain elements? Probably some of them I don't. Mm-hmm. And those are things I choose to try to learn more about, and and almost remove that weight, right? Because she's obviously feels this huge amount of weight that like, oh, I don't believe in God, and so this means all these things. Is like, oh, if you don't believe in God, like that's okay, like, but it's still a choice. Like you can choose to like research and figure it out and learn, and and we evolve and grow constantly. And so I would almost remove I don't know, it's a serious thing, but almost like remove the seriousness of it and realize that this is just part of growth of life, and belief is an action that we have to take. And sometimes we choose to believe things that we don't on faith and not on knowledge and other things. And things come and go and we grow as we get older. But.
Well, one other thing to consider too is, you might look at and ask yourself, is there any positive of this? And I would actually say, yeah, there is. She's thinking critically about life.
Totally.
Like she's questioning things. Like
what she should believe and what she shouldn't, versus just being blown with the wind like every other teenager. Yeah.
Right. Like she's serious at 10 years old. She's seriously questioning things. That's a good thing. That means that she's probably assertive and she's probably an independent thinker, and these are all good things, so take that into consideration as well. Of course you would hope that because you're religious and spiritual that she would come to another conclusion, and you know what? She might, yeah. She might over the next couple of years, go through this thing where she's like, I don't know. And then she might have this experience, where she no longer denies it or sees things differently, and she thinks, you know what, man, I've been wrong for the last couple of years. She already made one decision, one conscious thought and conclusion. She's completely capable of coming to another one. So don't blow it by shoving it down her throat or being crazy or being upset, and then she surely won't share anything with you, and she'll have a negative taste in her mouth for this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ryan, because Asia's had some family members that like religiously have struggled with what we believe. And it's funny where people in our lives that we care about, whether it's our kids or family members, when they make certain decisions, we assume that it's final. That we constantly go like, oh, she doesn't believe in God, period. It's like, no, that's like right now.
Right.
Who knows what tomorrow brings or next month or the next year or whatever. And so we have a tendency to kind of really pigeonhole people and then like put them in their box, when we're out, it's like, that's the flavor right now.
Right.
And things evolve and people grow and change. And so we need to not try to label and box people up so quickly, and just realize that's where they are on the path today.
Right.
And that the story's not over yet.
Right.
This is a long question. And it's loaded. You'll enjoy half of these statements leading up to the actual question itself. Okay. But I'm going to read it all because you might want to address some of these loaded.
Okay. Sounds good.
That Leonard has here. So Leonard Galgay, a large majority of boys have no male mentor in their lives because the mother has prevented a male from stepping up. This has resulted in a couple of generations of male youth today who have no understanding of masculinity or how to harness their own individual masculinity. This is evident in the fluid sexuality men experience today and the lack of discipline in their sexual relationships. We have a large population of male youth and men who need mentoring and direction on how to be the best men they can be, regardless of sexuality. So my question is, how do we bring the message of masculinity, integrity to a group of men who have been raised to believe masculinity is toxic and sexuality is fluid? How do we reach a generation who has been abandoned by males who negated their responsibility to them? I should add that these two questions are paraphrased from a discussion I had in a men's group who had a large number of struggling gay and bisexual men looking for direction in their lives.
So it is a little bit loaded, but even though that it is loaded that way, I actually agree with a lot of that. I don't think generally that's the case regarding women, for example.
Yeah,
I think
preventing men.
Right.
Yeah.
I think in certain circumstances, yes, absolutely. And the way to combat that is don't get involved with women who don't appreciate men.
Yeah. Because it's a result of men not doing their job and then women stepping in and, you know what I mean, making
completely
it based upon their experience
right.
with men, right? Like,
and,
how do you make
yes.
masculinity toxic? Be a toxic guy that women hate. That's how you perpetuate something.
Well, that's how you, I wouldn't say make masculinity toxic, but that's how you make people believe negatively about men.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Because that's their experience. Like I know women, personally, women who have a very negative perception of men because they have been damaged by men, and they haven't dealt with it in a healthy manner. They've dealt with it unhealthy, and so now all men fall into that camp, right? So that's not a healthy way to look at it. So don't get involved with women like this. Be the type of husband and father that you want to be, so you're less likely to get into this situation. I realize there's some things that are outside of your control, like the family court system, for example, I believe generally is stacked against men, and that can be a real challenge. It can be a very difficult thing. We heard about it earlier, and I don't know the entire context, but we've got a gentleman who asked a question earlier who can't see his son. Either his son won't let him or whatever. Like he's not seeing his son right now. So his son is probably less likely to be exposed to masculine male influences. Now, I feel like I'm going to give you a little bit of a cop-out answer when I share what I'm going to share, but this is the answer. Order of man is the answer. Yeah. That's why we started this organization. That's why we continue to share on a daily basis what it means to be a man and how men step up and how we can make ourselves more capable and strong and relevant and important in the lives of the people that we care about. This is the solution. So share this podcast, come to the events, support us. And this is why I feel like it's cop-out. It's very easy for me. I have a bias, of course, for me to say these things, but I'll tell you what, I get messages every single day from men who were raised without fathers, from homosexual men, from men who have had questions about even their gender, who have expressed to me gratitude for being strong and convicted in my views about masculinity because potentially for the first time in their life, they've experienced what a strong, capable man looks like, how he behaves, the virtues that he espouses, how he tries to behave with other people. And so I have men like you're talking about, men that are confused about their sexuality, men who are homosexual, who appreciate what it is that we're doing here. And this is what we do. We continue to spread this message, coach sports teams, be involved in your community. If you have a nephew or a young man, a neighbor who doesn't have a dad around, I mean, what's keeping you from, knocking on the door next door and saying, hey, I know Billy may not, like baseball or whatever, but me and my son are going to go play some catch. Do you think he'd want to come to the park with us? Like, we've done that. There's little boys who come hang out with us that are my kids' friends who, I'm probably the closest thing that they have to a father. And we have an opportunity and a responsibility to step up in these ways. So, yeah, like I said, it feels a little bit like a cop-out, but you're part of the solution. This is why we started Order of Man, to give men direction and guidance and counsel so that they can become the type of men they want to be.
And I'd say the best conduit of that is men. The best conduit to prepare boys is men. So our primary focus is men, but then we also have other focuses on young men through the legacy event, where it's a father and son event, where we create this environment where these men have the opportunity to bond with their sons in a different way. We present content to those young men so they can be level up, right, and see the benefits of being young men. And it's just, I don't think it's a cop-out. I don't think there's a more effective way.
I don't think it is either.
Preparing men to become better men. That's just the reality of it.
I shouldn't have used that term. I just think that maybe it's a perceived conflict of interest, right?
Yeah.
So
well, then
it isn't.
Listen to me and don't listen to Ryan.
That's right.
And now we don't have a conflict.
Which is what most people do anyways. There's other things too. Read good books. Like there's, of course, the book that I wrote, Sovereignty, but there's Wild at Heart, and Hatchet is one I talked about earlier. And so there's plenty of good books and resources. There's Trail Life USA. I would say Boy Scouts, but I think Boy Scouts is perpetuating much of the problem you're talking about. So Trail Life USA, there's other organizations, YMCA, Big Brothers Big Sisters, these types of organizations that you can get involved with and step up.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that we focus on in the Iron Council is one of the aspects or quadrants is contribution. And we talked about this. Contribution just isn't providing financially for your family, but contribution is your contribution to your community. And we encourage the guys in the IC, what are you doing to contribute? Right. What are you doing to make a difference? And sometimes in your case, it is inviting the boy next door to go to the park and play catch. Sometimes it is coaching a basketball team or a football team. There's lots of different avenues where we can step up and contribute and be that, I don't know, that lighthouse for young men in regards to what masculinity should look like.
Yep, definitely. Good question. Thoughtful question.
Yeah. Rob Christensen, how to motivate an unmotivated spouse without coming across judgmental. Let me read that again. How do I motivate my unmotivated spouse so she doesn't judge me? I do tons around the house. I'm busting my ass. I do everything and work out and feel alone in it the most of the time. I reread all that for him. All right, go ahead.
It's hard not to think about it in that context, though, in which you read it now, but that's kind of how it sounded.
I mean, that's sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, we made some assumptions there, but man, it does sound like that. So how do you motivate a spouse who's unmotivated?
Yeah, like maybe they're just not on the path, and you see this opportunity for them to be happier maybe, and they're just not after it.
You know, I think everybody's motivated by the things they're motivated by. I know that's circular reasoning, right? But that's true. Like, I'm not motivated to take out the trash. I'm not motivated to mow the lawn, but I'm motivated to do the podcast. I'm motivated to have sex with my wife. I'm motivated to play Legos with my kids, like, because those are all things I enjoy. I like doing. So the answer is, what does she like doing? What is she motivated by? Maybe what you presented or what she thinks is available is not inspiring or motivating to her.
Yeah.
So why would she be motivated by that?
And to Rob's point, he says, you know, he does a ton around the house and he works out and he feels like he's doing those things alone.
Yeah, you might be. Maybe she doesn't care about that stuff. Like, like let's say you do strength training, hypothetically. Maybe she's not interested in strength training, but she loves to run.
A hiker.
Or a hiker or a biker or a swimmer or whatever. You know, so it's like, maybe you're projecting a little bit of your own stuff onto her and thinking, why the hell, what's wrong with her? Why don't she like this stuff? Maybe she's just not motivated by that. Like my wife tonight, in fact, as of the recording of this podcast, is going to, I think it's her 5th or 6th beekeeping class. Every Tuesday night, she goes to a beekeeping class for 2 to 3 hours in a neighboring town. And I don't like that stuff. I don't care. I care that she likes it, but it's not something that's like relevant to me. But she's motivated by it. You know, she likes it. She finds it interesting and fascinating. She comes home and she tells me all about her dorky friends at beekeeping class and what they're talking about and how bees colonize, which actually bees are pretty fascinating animals.
Dude, it's amazing.
And it is amazing. It's like I had no idea. And so she's got all these things and she asked me to like build this thing for her bees. And I'm like, yeah, again, I'm not motivated by that, but if you are, then I got to foster that. Like I want to foster that in you. So we've talked about this. It seems like every week we talk about this.
And you use this example a lot about things that motivate your wife that you have no interest whatsoever.
Right.
But it's her thing.
Right.
And the same thing probably with you, where she's probably like, another book that Ryan's reading about self-help, right? It's like,
or if I come home and I want to practice like jujitsu moves on her, she's like, leave me alone.
She hates that.
But you know, they put up with it because they know it satisfies us, right? Like it brings an element. It gives us some edges, I guess you'd say. Like it gives us some depth and edges, and you know, just makes us interesting, right? Like what makes her interesting? What would she really cling on to? What would she really enjoy? And maybe it's just having questions and thoughts and ideas. I also mentioned this in a previous podcast that if she expresses even the slightest bit interest in something, whatever it is, then you as her husband need to foster it, right? So like if my wife, and we'll go on the beekeeping riff here for a minute, and this didn't happen, but just as a hypothetical, let's say one day she came to me and she's like, hey, did you know that bees, I don't know, whatever. She had some weird statistic on bees, right? Like bees have sex 100 times a day or whatever. I don't know. I'm just making stuff. Well, like obviously she's telling me that because there's some level of interest there, right? So my reaction should be, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. And then tomorrow, maybe go to the community center, like website, or get the brochure, and you can see, hey, there's this beekeeping class, and she was talking to me about bees and sex the other day. Like, I'm going to go give this to her. And so you go to her and you say, hey, hon, you were talking about bees the other night, and I was on this website and I saw that there's a beekeeping class 30 minutes from here. Like, you should go do this. So you foster it, right? You encourage it. So you look for little cues and hints that she's giving you to things that she might be interested in. And then you encourage her, you help her engage in that thing. And that's always been pretty successful for me.
I like it. Justin Finney.
All the beekeepers are going to be pissed at me over that conversation.
They don't have sex in multiple
times. They don't do that. I'm like, I don't know, okay? I don't know about bees. So if you need to correct me, feel free. Like, I know I'm wrong. So
I know we need more bees. I know that much. So your wife is not only just, it's not about bees. She's saving the world.
She is. She's saving the planet. Absolutely.
Saving the planet. Justin Finney, how does one change his trajectory? I feel I've been stuck in the same mentality and doing the same things and making the same mistakes I've been since my early 20s. I'm craving more substantial gains and meaning in my life.
Yeah, stop doing the same stuff you're doing. Like, just stop it.
Like, change it up.
Do something different. Move, find new friends, pick up a new hobby, get a new job, do a new workout, read a new book. Like, everything that you would normally, like, if it's comfortable, don't do that. Don't do that, because you're comfortable with the things that you're familiar with, and the things that you're familiar with are not working for you.
Yeah. So
stop doing the things that you're familiar with. If you wake up in the morning and you're used to waking up at 8 o'clock, don't wake up at 8 o'clock. Wake up at 7:30. If the first thing that you do when you get out of bed is I don't know, go to the convenience store and get a big 30-ounce Coke and a burrito, don't do that. Do something else. Have a banana at home. And you're going to be like, this sucks. This is uncomfortable. Exactly. That's the point. Like, just start making different decisions. If you're used to hanging out with the same bros that you've always been hanging out with, don't hang out with those guys. Like, go somewhere else where different people are, so you can put yourself in new environments and meet different people who might serve you better and who you might be able to serve. Everything about your life needs to change, right? You're in a rut right now because you're comfortable doing the things that you're familiar with. So get yourself in unfamiliar spaces, in unfamiliar environments, and let that play out. Let that, see where that leads you. And you'll find that it'll lead you to a different place, which, by the way, might not be the right place. You might start doing some different things and realize, oh no, this isn't where I wanted to go. Well, at least you found out. Now try something different, right? So life is really just a process of experimentation. I mean, I do the same thing in business. It's like, we try something and it works. Cool. We're going to do that again on a greater level. Or we try something and it doesn't work. I'm like, ooh, that failed miserably. Like, what do we need to change about this? Life is a process of experimentation. I think about that when I have conversations with people. I said something to my wife the other day, and as soon as the words passed my lips, I'm like, ooh, that was not the right thing to say. And so, mental note, file it away. Don't ever say that again. Right? Like, that doesn't work, Yeah. So, like, evaluate everything you're doing. Oh, when I'm with these friends, this is what happens. I get drunk, I get shit-faced, I do stupid things, I hook up with slutty women, and I don't want that to happen. So what is the common denominator? Oh, those friends. Gotta find new friends. Check. Or alcohol. Shouldn't drink alcohol. Check. Shouldn't go to the bar. Got it. Process of experimentation. Just like a scientist would do, right? A scientist has a hypothesis, right? So he thinks, okay, this is what's going to happen. He has a standard, a control group, and a variable group. Now you're in the variable group. You're trying new things, and then you evaluate. Did that work? Did it not? Yes, it worked. Cool. We're going to do that. No, it didn't. Okay, I got to switch out one of the variables to test this theory, this idea. And that's all you're doing on a daily basis. You're just testing.
Yeah, I like it. I think one way to really shake the boat up too is if there's something that you've always wanted to do, be unreasonable and commit to doing it. So if whatever in the back of your mind you thought, oh, I wanted to run a marathon or I want to do this, then do it.
Go do it.
Yeah, just go do it. Like
Yep.
literally sign up, not even be prepared.
Yep.
Sign up for a Tough Mudder or sign up for whatever it is that you have been telling your story and excuses of why you shouldn't do it, sign up for it.
Right.
And then fall flat on your face if you need to. But just do it. Do it anyway.
And nothing's
prepare
gonna
for it
happen.
and do your best. Yeah.
Nothing is going to happen.
Exactly. But it will get you out of that rut, and you'll feel a little crazy about it too.
Right.
You'll be like, I can't even believe I'm doing this. I'm being completely unreasonable. I bought airline tickets to some place I've never been before, and I'm going to do a 14-mile hike in Peru.
Right.
I have no idea what I'm doing. This is awesome. Like, find out what that is.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. David Rivas, how to accept the truth of our insecurities of being contested. How we hate being wrong. I know I do. Thank you, Ryan Mickler. Becoming more capable man is a non-negotiable.
Well, you got to ask yourself, what do I want? Do I want to be successful, or do I want to be right 100% of the time? And I think about that in any context. Think about it on my jiu-jitsu path. Like when people tell me things, upper belts tell me things, like, why in the world would I say, no, that's stupid? I might have had a different thought, and they're like, no, you should do this instead. Like, who am I to say, no, I'm going to do it this way? That guy knows. Like, why wouldn't I take that into consideration? It's just amazing how often we let our ego get in the way. So ask yourself, like, what is it that you want specifically? Not, I want more money. Everybody wants more money. Not, I want a great relationship. Everybody wants a great relationship. Like, specifically, how much money? What does the relationship look like? What are you going to be doing for a career? What do you want your body fat percentage to be? What type of lifts do you want to do? How much do you want to be able to lift, or how fast do you want to be able to run? And then eliminate anything, including yourself, that's getting in the way of keeping you from having the thing that you're after, the thing that you want. And many times that's all it is. It's just you telling yourself you're not worth it, or you can't do it, or you weren't born to do this, or you aren't gifted or lucky enough like anybody else. Those are all things designed to keep you safe and secure and comfortable and out of harm's way, which serve us in some capacity, but ultimately they don't allow us to progress and grow. So be very real with yourself. This is where this after action review comes in, and why it's so important, and why you look at yourself and your performance objectively so that you can begin to make improvements. Be coachable. In fact, a lot of times people say, oh, what are the most important virtues that you should have? And one of them is coachability, for me anyways.
Yeah.
I think coachability is one of the most important virtues for success. And it's something that I strive to do, to be coachable. So when somebody who has more information about a subject shares something with me, I try to take that to heart and apply it. And you know what? When I do, it works out. Surprise, surprise. Like, it works. And I'm like, oh, I just proved that works. And then it solidifies that pathway, right? This action produces this result. And I start to see it in action, then you just keep implementing it. So yeah, find mentors and be coachable. That's it.
Yeah. What's interesting too, I wonder your thoughts on this, Ryan, but it's funny how sometimes when we're not coachable and that ego gets in the way, we don't want to take advice. We actually think that if we took advice and we were humble in that moment, that those people would perceive us as less valuable. When in reality, it's the complete opposite.
Do you
right?
really
Like,
think people think that?
I think they do. I think that's why I think that's, don't you? I think that's behind the ego. It's about,
no, I don't think that
good.
is.
It's about
that
looking
is true.
like I have it all figured out. And so they don't want to take input from someone because they want to come across as though they have it all figured out. In reality, it's if I'm going to coach someone and they like act like they have it all figured out, or let's say assume they approach it correctly. Like, oh, thanks, Kip. That was really beneficial, whatever. I don't think less of them. I don't go, oh man, my coaching was valuable and he took my coaching really serious. So yeah, he's less of a man than I thought he was.
No,
like
nobody thinks that.
I don't think, no one ever thinks that, but I think we think it takes away from our value a little bit when we are, I don't know, when we're more coachable sometimes, like we don't have our crap together.
I'll give you I think that's true. Let me give you an example of that. So a couple of weeks ago at jiu-jitsu, I had an upper belt. I was trying like a baseball bat choke, and I wasn't able to get it on him. I'm like, well, this is not working, And he stopped me. He's like, hey, you need to do this. Like, you need to change your grip and adjust here. And so I adjusted it. And last night I tried it and it worked, you know, and I submitted him. And he's like, oh man, I shouldn't have taught you that. Just joking around, you know? He's like, I shouldn't have taught you that. And we kind of laughed about it. He's like, no, he's like, I want you to know that was really good. Like, that was awesome that you took that suggestion and you applied it and it worked. Like, way to go. Now I got to get better, is essentially what he said.
Yeah.
Like, he thought better of me.
Yeah.
Because I took it to heart and I was like, oh, okay, so change this grip. And it worked. Not only did it make me a better tacticianer, he respected me more because I was coachable, and I took that to heart and I applied it, and it worked the way it was supposed to work. And also it served him because A, he was able to teach. There's value in somebody teaching because he feels pride in being able to teach. So let him teach. And B, he has to improve his game now because otherwise I'll continue to catch him in that. Yeah. So he's served in many different ways.
Yeah, and it helps him get better at what he does when he teaches.
Right.
Whenever you have to explain something to someone, it almost solidifies it better in your own mind as well. So it's really to their benefit.
Yes. Yep. Let's take a couple more because I think we're getting close on time. We might be slightly over. I don't know. Somewhere right in there.
Kobe King, what are some tips you would give a person who would rather listen than speak to improve their communication in all aspects, aka relationships and business?
Well, okay, so let me.
I know.
So what are some tips for somebody who would rather listen than speak?
To improve their communication.
So I hate the term safe space. It's a stupid term, but I'm actually kind of got to use it here a little bit. You need to foster an environment where it's comfortable for them to start speaking up. Because if you don't, then they'll always look at speaking up as a threat. And it is a threat. By definition, it's a threat. Anytime you speak up, you are making yourself vulnerable, which is another word I don't completely like because of how it's been skewed. Yeah, but that's what you're doing. You're basically saying, anytime you speak up, what you're actually saying is judge my thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, judge me as a human being, because we are a collection of our thoughts and actions. So I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to tell you some things, and I want you to judge everything about me. Like, who wants to do that?
You, apparently.
I'm like podcast. I'm like a glutton for punishment. Right? Like,
totally.
It's, you know what? I still get nervous sometimes when I'm going to do a podcast or speak in public because of that.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to foster this in somebody else to being able to express their thoughts and ideas, then at least initially, you need to create an environment where they feel comfortable and secure enough with you and the relationship and how you'll respond to be able to do that. And so you build upon it in a non-threatening way. Maybe one day, and I don't know the context of this, but let's say you're talking with your wife. Like, is there some context to this or no?
No.
Okay, so let's say you're talking, or your wife or your kid. Just ask them about their day and shut up. You just shut up. Don't ask any other questions. Don't interject about your day. Don't teach any lessons. Like, when they're like, oh yeah, my day was fill in the blank, say, oh, that's interesting. Sounds like fun.
What you should have done.
Yes, exactly. Right. So now you're taking away from the space that you're trying to create for them.
Yeah.
And if they don't fully engage, then ask a probing question. Like, if at the dinner table, one of the things that we ask all of our kids individually at the dinner table is, what was your favorite part about the day? And sometimes some of them will say, I don't know. Well, no, like, did you enjoy this? So we start probing a little bit, right? Did you enjoy this? What did you think about this part of the day? And we try to get them to go a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And so this is what you do. You ask these open-ended questions and you get them to respond more and open up, and you don't react inappropriately so they shut down. And then you just continue to foster this until they feel comfortable enough, like sharing even in intimidating environments.
Yeah.
Without context, I think that's the advice I'd give.
I like it. Sean Marskell, what are some ways to discipline children without physical punishment? For example, a punishment that you guys may have found to work with a toddler who bites or hits when he's angry. Thanks in advance, guys.
If my kids bite or kick when they're angry, my youngest too, they're like really frustrated and they're emotional typically. You know, they're like heated up, like they're emotional, they're charged about something, right? Which actually might be warranted. Like if their brother hit him and they bite him back, like I'm like, well, good call. I think that's probably the right approach.
To defend yourself.
Exactly. You know, so you got to figure out what they're triggered by, you know, what they're emotional about. But usually it's just some space, right? Like I'm not going to discipline my 3-year-old necessarily, but I might say, hey, you know what? At dinner, this happens all the time. My 3-year-old bouncing off all the walls, like jumping up and down, and then he'll back talk. And I'm like, you know what? Go sit on the stairs and then come back in when you're ready. Yeah. And so he gets down and he has this like teary-eyed little pouty face and he goes, yeah, Matt, just like that. Over. Matt, yeah. He sits on the stairs and then he'll usually yell, Dad, I'm ready. Come on back. And then we don't say anything else about it. It's like kind of like self-punishment. Like I'm not going to tell you, sit there for 15 minutes. And then, no, just sit there until you're ready to behave like a normal, rational human being. And you can have dinner respectfully with us. Yeah. Other things are restrictions or taking away items, you know, like if Legos, we'll go to Legos like we talked about earlier. Legos are everywhere, but you know what?
The podcast is now sponsored by Legos.
Yeah. That would be awesome. If you guys have a connection, let us know, please.
Ryan's like, man, we're going poor. I'm buying all these expensive Legos. I need a discount or something.
I just want more Legos. I'll buy them or get them for free or whatever I can do to have more Legos. Anyways, you know, but if I find them all over the place and I've told them to clean them up, like, I'm like, sorry, these ones are mine now. You lost them, right? Like, if you're not going to treat your things with respect and treat my house with respect, then you don't get to participate the way that you want to. So you lose them. So restrictions, taking away items, that always seems to work pretty. Giving them some space just to like cool off for a minute, like just go cool off. When you're ready to come back, you can. My oldest, he gets fired up sometimes, and him, like I can just tell him, just breathe. Like just breathe. Yeah. He knows the box breathing method. So I say, you know what, just go in your other room and do some box breathing, like cool off, and then you can come back in here and we'll engage and we'll talk, but we're not doing this now. And he knows exactly what that means. It's different for everybody, but yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Should we wrap up, sir?
Let's wrap up. Yep.
All right. So guys, we filled these questions from Facebook and we had kind of a lot of conversations around kids.
Yeah, tons
today around, you know, how do we make a difference? And Ryan alluded to this earlier. We make a difference by pushing out this message, right? By sharing this podcast, by sharing the YouTube channels that's part of the YouTube, the Order of Man YouTube channel. You know, grab some of those videos, email them to a friend. You know, if they strike a chord with you or you think that there's beneficial content, share that with other individuals. Mm-hmm. Share the message ultimately. Yeah. You guys can join us at facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And then for you guys willing to kind of step on the court in life, not be so much as a spectator, but actually rub shoulders with more like-minded men, you can join us in the Iron Council. To learn more about that, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. We have our legacy event that is probably full at this point. Do you want to kind of give us an update on?
Yeah, I think there might be 1 or 2 spots left. If there is any spots, it's like 1 or maybe 2. So if you're interested, jump on that quick.
Yeah, that's June 11th through the 14th. To learn more, orderofman.com/legacy. And that's for men and their boys between the ages of 8 and 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we have our main event May 29th through the 30th of this year. It's going to be an awesome event. It's in Maine as well. That's orderofman.com/Maine event. And that's Maine as in the state, Maine.
Yes.
And then, of course, follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler.
Got some good ideas there that I'm going to make available here soon. Should be interesting. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Kip. Appreciate it. Guys, I appreciate you. Great questions. Again, all along the lines of mostly children and fatherhood and husband, really family-oriented, I guess, this week. So that's good. I like those questions. Yeah, that's all I've got. Appreciate you guys. Glad you're on the path with us. Continue to share. We do appreciate the shares and the visibility that we gain when you put this out into the world because you know as well as we do that, man, the world needs it. That we really need masculinity, and this is a call to step up more fully into being a man. So we'll let you get going. We'll be back next week. But until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.